So we saw the report come out a few days ago that the Minneapolis City Council decided through a veto-proof majority that it is intent on dismantling the Minneapolis Police Department and replacing it with a reimagined vision of public safety. Now, this is an interesting story in its own right, but there's been a major development to the story, which is that the neighboring county sheriff is basically threatening Minneapolis, saying that many agencies don't want to go back to the city and restore order after Minneapolis has threatened to disband their police department. Now, this is not the county sheriff of Minneapolis, of Hennepin County, which is the county which possesses Minneapolis. It's of a neighboring county saying, look, man, we've been in your county, we've been in your city trying to sort of restore order for you guys. And, and oftentimes in normal affairs, we do sort of trade resources and share stuff around. But if you're saying that you're going to dismantle your police department, then we're not going to help you out. We're not going to do the typical sort of resource sharing that we normally do. We won't help you out in your endeavor. And this actually is a major, major problem, which we've been seeing across the country when it comes to police reforms, even when it comes to minor police reforms across the country, to be clear, which is that the police departments in a particular county, and even as you can see there in neighboring counties, have so much power over local and city government. They have so much power over the local affairs that there isn't a clear or corresponding democratic check on the police institutions in our country, because again, they're so bloated, they have so much power and so much say that they can basically threaten a city council. And there you saw there a neighboring county threatening the city council of Minneapolis. It's actually very, very outrageous. And again, this is something that we see across the country, which is that when it comes to police reforms, you try to reform the police and then the sheriff or someone in the institution or someone in the agency just doesn't follow the rules. I mean, we see instances of banning chokeholds or banning tactics. And oftentimes what ends up happening is, first of all, the officers, in the heat of a moment, oftentimes, might forget their training a little bit, or they do a tactic which is technically banned. I mean, you saw there with Eric Gardner, and technically also when it came to George Floyd, those tactics were banned, but they were used anyway. Banning tactics historically isn't like the most effective way. It can help around the margins, but it isn't particularly effective. But also we see instances where the agency and the institutions, the police unions, actually end up fighting the attempts of democratic checks, attempts to, reform the police department, wearing body cams. Oftentimes the police unions or the various kinds of, people who work in the police agency end up fighting those reforms, saying that, oh, those things are only going to hurt us. They'll hurt our institution. And police have so much power in our country that they're able to do stuff like that. They're able to threaten the neighboring county, mind you, not even the county of Minneapolis. The neighboring county is threatening Minneapolis City Council, saying, look, man, if you do this, then it's on you. We won't help you restore order. If there's an issue in the future, you won't have our help. I mean, this is a threat. This is a clear threat. And I think that, if you care about democracy, like this is a genuine problem for democracy. Like, you can disagree when it comes to the particular reforms that the Minneapolis City Council is hoping to do. They're having a year time period where they're going to be researching how they can, reformulate the police department and reformulate things in order to have a reimagined vision of public safety, as they put it there. But again, you can disagree with the Minneapolis attempt of what they're trying to do here. But I think it is fair to say that it's not right of a neighboring county to threaten the city council of another county, saying, look, we're not going to help you if you go down this rabbit hole of doing this experiment. We won't help you out because you're not helping police. Right. And this also goes to, one of the points when it comes to the whole bad apples policing, right? Which is that oftentimes police officers, if they get fired at one job or they leave one job, they'll move to a neighboring county and get a job there. One of the concerns that, this county sheriff has, and actually it was mentioned, is basically that, people from our county won't be able to go in and get jobs in Minneapolis. Right. So it's this idea that even reformulating the police system in Minneapolis is harmful to neighboring counties. So again, there's not a corresponding democratic check, and it just goes to show you how police have way too much control, way too much power, and we do not have enough control as the people. As a democracy, we do not have any clear way of having a democratic check on this, an institution which it has the ability to use force, has the ability to use oppressive force on us. You'd think that should be the institution which has the most democratic control, right? That the vote matters the most on handling police, on that we have the most control over police, but it turns out that we have the least control over police of many institutions, and that's a major problem. Now, when it comes to this whole thing of disbanding or dismantling, however you want to say it, the Minneapolis Police Department, basically here 9 members of the Minneapolis City Council, a veto-proof majority, which is important because I made a video not too long ago, Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, saying, look, I don't support the full abolition of the Minneapolis Police Department, but this is a veto-proof majority, so Jacob can do all he wants, kick and plead all he wants. They are going to be doing something major. Again, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. It could just end up being, well, they've done a few things, tampered around the edges, but hopefully, we're going to start to see, some kind of real change here. So they pledged Sunday to dismantle the police department, promising to create a new system of public safety in the city where law enforcement has long been accused of racism. Now, again, I want to bring us back a little bit to that county issue there, which is that, when it comes to this, Minneapolis has been trying to reformulate their police department for years and years and years. They've tried to do stuff with body cams. They've tried to do tactic banning, and they've concluded that it doesn't work, right? They themselves, the people of Minneapolis and the members of city council have man, this stuff isn't working. This stuff isn't changing the culture that we have. So we've got to start from scratch. And part of that, again, goes back to this issue when it comes to not having a clear democratic check on the institution, and the institution is really outgrowing the institution is outgrowing the ability to have a democratic check on it, which is that there's so much entrenched power. The police department is so big, so powerful that you can't have control over it, right? It's almost its own independent thing. And this is an issue across the country. In my hometown, or actually not really my hometown, but in my county where I live in Fairfax County, we have a relatively great police department compared to many other parts of the country, right? But the police chief and the sheriff and the sheriffs have so much power over local affairs. They have so much power over local government, and there aren't very many clear checks, clear ways to regulate policing, because at the end of the day, police officers can kind of do what they want. They can kind of say, well, we are or are not going to enforce this law or enforce this rule. You can start to make changes, but it's really difficult. Fortunately, more recently, Fairfax County has been much better when it comes to a lot of this stuff, but it took years. It took decades, actually decades and decades of consistent work to even get very minor changes into this thing. And it just goes to show you how even in the best places, the police departments have so much independent power that doesn't really have a clear, again, democratic check. There isn't a real way to check them democratically. And it's a major problem that we're starting to see. Now, the other interesting thing that we're going to want to look at here is how Donald Trump is trying to frame this thing when it comes to the election. You can see here, law and order, not defund and abolish the police. The radical left Democrats have gone absolutely crazy. So Donald Trump right now, if you've seen the polls, you'll know that Donald Trump is in a lot of trouble when it comes to the polling. The numbers do not look good for Donald Trump right now. There was a recent CNN poll which had Donald Trump down, I think, like 14-something points. Now, Donald Trump was disputing the poll on Twitter, saying that it was all made up, that it's all just fake news, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it's pretty interesting. You should go to Donald Trump's Twitter. He has a whole rage tweet session about it. But regardless, the polls don't look particularly good for Donald Trump. It's not just the CNN poll. There's been all kinds of polling right now, which shows that the public really did not like Donald Trump's general response to the George Floyd stuff, and his numbers really did go down. Donald Trump's numbers did take a hit throughout the course of this thing. But to see Donald Trump here now leaning into this idea of law and order is interesting. Most likely, they've looked at the numbers and said that, and found that, phrases like defund or abolish the police don't poll particularly well. And so Donald Trump is trying to frame himself as the law and order candidate, and trying to frame Joe Biden and the Democrats as just wanting to abolish the police and, have anarchy on the streets and things like that. Obviously, that isn't true. Actually, I just recorded a video. I'm not sure if it'll be uploaded before or after this one. About Joe Biden, how he's saying that he does not support defunding the police. So it's an interesting thing, which we're going to have to see, an interesting dynamic that we're going to have to follow when it comes to this. Is Donald Trump able to leverage this whole thing and try to sort of frame the Democratic Party as being anti-police and sort of anti-law and order? How is that going to play out with the American public? Because here's the thing, guys, I mean, I've talked about it on this channel. I'm very, very, very much so in support of defunding the police. In fact, I even more so lead towards the abolish side of things and just, reimagine the way in which we think about public safety in this country. That's where I am. But it is true that if you look at the polling of the phrase abolish the police or defund the police, the polling for that stuff, I mean, there isn't a ton of polling when it comes to defunding the police because a lot of that stuff is new. That stuff will probably come out in the coming weeks. But it is true that that stuff doesn't sort of test well, right? Like you throw that stuff out there, a lot of people are confused. They don't really know what it means. And so it is an interesting situation right now where Donald Trump is trying to frame the Democrats as just being anti-police and being pro-anarchy. So we're going to have to see how that plays out.